This is a DaLunchbox version 2. It is a portable ground station and combined carry case that was crowdfunded on Kickstarter earlier this year. It did eventually ship, and there were some criticisms regarding its design as it was released with several major flaws, one of which was many units arriving DOA. The second of which was the diversity receivers did not work in diversity mode due to a problem with the firmware. The device was reverse engineered, namely by a person called Blue Jay and another person called Bruce's dad, who worked together to port the RX5 808 Pro Diversity open source firmware to this, and also made a better firmware for the DVR that's built into this machine. They published a document informing people how to flash this onto lunchboxes they'd already received. Shipments of these devices were stopped shortly thereafter, and future versions of it were released with this firmware on officially, and this is one of those post-revision units. Another thing which was fixed on this post-revision version is the battery included with the machine has protection and charging circuits built into it. It was also shipped with a piece of 3D printed plastic which prevents the device turning on in shipping. This was apparently one of the problems with the machine and why several of the machines arrived DOA. So if we turn the device on and allow it to boot up, it will go through its splash screen and we will start seeing the picture from the quad which is beside me. Okay, that's the boot up process. At the moment it defaults to loading into the DVR mode so you can see how much space is free on it. However, the first thing I'll point out is the top control here will switch you between the DVR input and a live input, so you can reduce a little bit of latency by using that. The middle button is an on-off for the screen. So you can save a little power if you're just charging your batteries and not actually flying. The bottom button is a menu button for adjusting the screen. When you're using this, these two buttons become the up and down to adjust these parameters. On this side, if I just switch back to the DVR mode, are the controls for the DVR. The top button will start recording and stop it. The middle button is a menu button, but you need to hold it down. And you hold it down again to get into the next menu. The bottom button will switch into a playback mode. So it takes a few seconds for it to scan the card and load this. And we can see the image that is that we have just recorded. Just move that out of the way. The top button should play this, but of course there was no movement, so we should do this. Actually, correction, the middle button is what plays this. Holding down the middle button will bring the menu up where you can delete any footage you don't want. Again, holding it down long will get you into the second menu. And if I remember correctly, the top button, if you have multiple clips, will cycle you through those clips so you can select them before playback and deletion. Holding this down again will get you back into the live feed. I will switch it back to live mode for the time being. The receiver menu is controlled mostly by this button, which is both the enter button for selecting parameters and it is a multi-stage menu button. Holding it down for about a second and release it will bring up this menu on the side. The top icon of which is the switch between manual mode and auto scan mode, and the bottom menu of which, if you use this button to select it, will let you choose between whether to sort by frequency or sort by channel name. I prefer to sort by frequency, and I normally have it in manual mode because the whoops I use, the cameras are not particularly good, so this can interfere with auto scan a bit. If you hold the button down for long, you will get another menu. So from here you can choose between the search and tune, a band scan which will use the display to give you an overview of what frequencies are currently being used across the spectrum, so you can find a nice blank bit of radio frequency to put your quad on. If I go back to a long press again, you have RSSI calibration so that you can set up your diversity better. It will launch a wizard that will take you through how to do this. After you've done your RSSI calibration, there's a birdwatch mode, which is a new feature in this firmware that will allow you to have the device automatically channel hop to whatever is broadcasting, and then if it stops broadcasting it will go on to the next thing. So it's designed for spectating at events rather than using with your quad. The charger on the side is fairly simple to use. You just plug it in. Light goes red, light goes green when it's done. There are two switches which are on the upwards position are for normal batteries such as this, and in the downwards position are for HV batteries, which I don't use. I do have a couple of points of things that could still do with improvement, perhaps in a future revision of the hardware. One is the most you can do while you're charging your LiPos after a session is to turn the screen off. The receivers have still got power and they're still drawing it. The DVR's also still got power and it's still drawing it. So ideally placing them on their own power switch might be a good way forward, and I may modify the device to include that into the future. The second point would be the internal battery has no way for you to tell what the charge level is, and you can't see when it's charging, although it does charge when the device is powered off. This concludes my brief video on DaLunchbox version 2. If you have any comments or criticisms, please put them below.